Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi Shvis, Perek Yud, Halacha Aleph, and Halacha Beis. We are learning today Daf Pei Gimel, and we left off on Daf Pei Gimel Amud Aleph all the way on top of the Amud. We had on Daf Pei Bei Amud Beis, the Gemara quoted the Braisa that says enigmatic words. The words are Shloishim Yoim, Loi Isoi. Explain Shmuel that what's the meaning of 30 days he shall not come, lo yisoi. It means that stam halva, even when the due date was not specified, or when the due date is not specified, automatically by default, the loan is a loan that can only be collected in 30 days. And the Gemara then brought from the pasuk that we have, Karva shnas hasheva shnas hashmita, and the obvious question is that, the seventh year is the year of Shemitah, so it's superfluous. So we learn from there that Shemitah makes a person relinquish their loans, and prior to the due date, you have to relinquish, meaning you cannot collect, it's not due yet, and there is something other than Shemitah, which is the concept of Stam Halva, that for 30 days, you cannot collect, and Adarabah, that's the whole pshat in the pasuk, that a person might say, as we learned the Pnei Moshe's pshat in the Limud, that 30 days before the end of the seventh year, person will say, how can I lend money? For 30 days I can't collect. And then it's the end of the seventh year and the whole thing becomes canceled. And so the Torah says, nevertheless, if someone asks you for a loan, you're chayiv to give them the loan. That is the Limud that we have from Karva, Shnas Hasheva, Shnas Shmita. And what we will start, first of all, we're going to close up this topic, another couple of lines on this, and then the Gemara is going to learn another limud from the same pasuk. We're going to go back to the Mishnah. Don't forget, the Nakuda of the Mishnah is that what type of monetary debt becomes canceled by Shemitah or by Shvius, only one that originated in a loan. And the Mishnah specified many other types of chiyuvim, like oines or mafata or shemra, and the Gemara is going to go through more of what the Mishnah spoke out, that they are not canceled by Shvi'is. And the big topic that we will have before Halacha Beis is the following: that if a person contests a debt by claiming lahadam, you never lent me the money, or I paid you back, in a scenario where such a claim stands, that debt, imagine, is not a debt that is shaykh to be canceled by Shvi'is, because there's a complete denial of it. And therefore, says the Gemara, if after Shvi'is comes and goes, the person admits that the money was owed the whole time, that loan will not be canceled. We don't say, well, now anyways, the year of Shvi'is went by, so the debt is canceled. What type of debt becomes canceled because of Shvi'is? A debt that's collectible. If the debt is not collectible, because the person already made a counterclaim, which is valid in a Beis Din, it's gavaldik, then that debt now retroactively was never there to be canceled. And now that you're moided that you always owed the money, you'll be chayiv to pay the money. We're going to spend some time learning a lot of consequences of this topic. And from there, we're going to move to the next Mishnah, to Halacha Beis, that's going to introduce the din of pruzbul. Don't forget, Chevra, pruzbul is a compilation of the words pruz or even prois. Prois means a prize. Pruz means a takana that Chazal made both for the rich and for the poor, made by Hillel Hazakin, as we'll see. And actually, the Gemara, we spoke already a Machlekes Rashi Tosfos and Masechta Makos, and we spoke about a Ritva. Really, the Gemara over here will differentiate between Hamoiser Shtoiros of Lebeis Din and the Pruzbul, as we'll see. Excuse me, when we learn the Sugya. So, Chavra, all the way on top of Pei Gimel, Amud Aleph, all the way on top of the Amud. Okay. Says the Gemara, I will show you more support to what? To the din that we learned that stam halva shloishim yoim, and even if the loan was given 30 days before the end of Shvi'is, which means it's going to be a type of loan that was never collectible, nevertheless, for 30 days you can't collect. And then, because you came to the end of the 7th year, it's going to completely cancel the loan, and the loan will be canceled. And indeed, loy kain, is it not that Omar Rabbi Babar Mamo, and also Amram, and also Rav Masna, in the name of Rav, if a person, that's what we learned yesterday, if you gave a loan and you made a condition on the condition that I will not demand payment. So again, this is a debt that you cannot collect. Nevertheless, Hashvius Mishamtasoi, Shvius will nullify the loan, which is Gavaldik. So this adds another layer that when we learned, again, yesterday in the Pnei Moshe, that the Karva Shnas Hasheva Shnas Hashmita is putting the 30 days together with the end of the 7th year. One taka would have countered by saying that doesn't make sense, because if a loan was given at a time where it never was able to be collected, one might have thought such a loan should not be canceled. It's not true, because of this din that we quoted yesterday, B'Shem Rav, which is beautiful. Okay, and now the Gemara is going to bring a completely different limud from the same pasuk. That Ashkach Tani Rabbi Shmuel. We found the brisa that was taught in the academy of Rabbi Shmuel. And going back to the pasuk that we have in Parshas Re'eh, and again, if you want to take a look in the Torah Oyer Hashalim here on the side, the pasuk reads that Hashem is forewarning us. That make sure, beware, that there might be a thought, an evil thought, a Belial thought in your heart by saying that since Karva Shnasa Sheva Snasha Smita, and therefore and you might and Hashem, the ani is going to call out to God, and then the Torah says in the positive, so says the Braisa, so the Braisa articulates the question that loy hishnas hasheva, and let's go with the version, and also hishnas hashmita. So why does the Torah have to say both? Says the Braisa, here we go, that a person should not say that kol sheish shanim sodeu lefanai, that in a case where when a person loaned money, he received an apoitika, a person that was miyachad loy karka, and we're going to dafka speak about a apoitika mefayrash, as we just learned a few days ago. It's not only that the borrower said that you will collect from this property, if I'll default, but he worded it in a way that you may not collect from any other place other than from this property. And in such a scenario, the only place of collection is from this sadeh or from this vineyard or karmei lefanai. Now, in such a case, you might think that if this debt was not paid and Shvi'is came and went, that you may not collect it anymore. In other words, you might think that an apoitika doesn't mean that it's already collected. No. Which is teaching you that only a loan becomes canceled. But a lien on the level of an apoitika mefayrish doesn't get canceled because it's mamish like a mashkin. In other words, the logic is it's already collected. It's a whole different limit. And again, don't forget that we do differentiate between this apoitika mefayrish and an apoitika stam, because if a person doesn't word it that you may not collect it from any other property other than from this one, if you don't word it that way, even though you said, I'm being miyached, I'm designating this land as a security, since the lender has the right to collect it from any property that he wants, so it's not considered collected yet, because we don't even know from what he'll collect it from. And such a loan will become canceled on Shvi'is. Okay. And now going back to the Mishnah. So whether there's an oinus or a mafata, God forbid, in which part of the penalty is for this man to pay to the father of the nara 50 shekel, or if a person is moitzi shemra and he has to pay to his father-in-law 100 silver shekel. So there's a debt. So nevertheless, says the Mishnah, that this debt is not canceled because it didn't originate from a loan. Now, all of this, finally, says the Gemara, Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, that this is only the Rav Meiri, the view of Rav Meir. It's the Rav Meir is the one that says, B'milva hadavar talui. So now we know a new thing, that really it's a machlokes. And there's a Stam Mishnah Rav Meir. And we're not saying we don't paskin this way. But the whole beginning, the whole Yisoid of the 10th chapter of Shvi'is, Perek HaShvi'is and Masechta Shvi'is, is all based on Shitas Rav Meir. Masha'enkein, whether it is the Chachamim, whether it is Rabbi Yehuda, they argue with Rav Meir, and they hold it doesn't matter what was the origin of the debt. All of the debts become canceled, again, but that's not the Shita of Rav Meir. The next case, the next exception, the Mishnah says that V'chol Masa Bezdin. Now, what does it mean on Maisa Bezdin? What does it mean on Maisa Bezdin? So, Taichas the Gemara, Elu Gizrei Dinim. Gizrei Dinim are court orders that are recorded. And look inside the Marafulda, couple of lines before the end of the narrow lines. Gizrei Dinim, Piskei Dinim. The key is Shekosvoloi Bezdin. And the Nusach that you have on that psak is Tzei Tenloi, go and pay. Now, once Beis Din writes, go and pay, it's amazing. Even if the cause of this psak din was a loan, doesn't matter from what. No matter how a person owes money, if it was adjudicated and it came to the place where the Beis Din gave a psak and they wrote it down, look at the logic. Such a document considers the debt as if it's already collected. So says the Marafulda. Havalei kigavui. And just like Hamal Va'al Mashkin, or as we just learned, if there's an apoitik in Mefayrish, we say that the lender already collected, even though he didn't, but it's as if he already collected, because he has access to the land. By the Mashkin, he taka has the Mashkin. We'll see more about it in a moment. It's not as simple as it sounds. So if the lender has a document from a Beis Din in which the borrower has to pay, we view it as if he already collected the debt. So therefore, it's not canceled, it's already collected, even though in actuality, he's going to collect it. It's beautiful. And now, says the Gemara the following, Pshita da Milsam. The following is clear, which is that if you have a milva, if something began, a debt originated as a loan, but at some point, the borrower denied owing the money, which that's the meaning of the word, shehi na'ases kafranis, from the words koifer. That means that there was a complete denial. And there can be two denials, generally. Either lahadam, the borrower is negating the fact that he ever borrowed the money, or he's not negating the fact that he borrowed the money, but he claims parati. And I'll tell you more than that. Even when there is a document, right? So the question is, right, these are the classics, right? The borrower, if he says, I paid back, so the lender tells him, if you paid back, then why do I have the document? Because when you pay back, you should either get a receipt or you should have taken the loan document from me. Now, that's a good taina if the borrower doesn't counterclaim. We never counterclaim for the borrower. But if the borrower is going to say, no, it's not true. I paid you back. I took the shtar. I lost the shtar. And evidently you found it. In other words, the borrower made a claim that things as they are prior to the rebuttal, if there is a rebuttal from the lender, this loan is uncollectible because it was denied. And like we mentioned, now comes ahead the time is passing, Shvi'is comes, Shvi'is goes. During the year of Shvi'is, the lender was unable to collect it b'chlal because there was a denial. Beautiful. So what happened was, to the detriment of the borrower, of the denier, that loan eina mishametes is not canceled. Now you're going to argue, lamai nafkamina. Well, big nafkamina. Just as an example, if the borrower claimed lahadam means I never took the loan. The lender will find a proof that he did lend him the money He found the proof only on the 8th year. So now he reopens the Dintoida. He has new evidence. The borrower cannot claim, okay, now Enachanami, you caught me, but Shvius went. No. Since during the year of Shvius, it was a kafranis loan, that loan is not canceled. And by the way, the same thing in the other direction. That if there was a loan that was a kafranis, so that he couldn't collect it. And the borrower, right before the end of Shvius, goes ahead and he's moidem. No, I denied, but I lied, or I forgot. And he reassumes the loan. Kafranish inasas milva. If that happened before the end of the 7th year, let's go with the general opinion, it's the end of the 7th year that cancels the loan. So then yes, mishametes. And it's all connected with, like we said yesterday, that in the same pasuk, that we have the words lo yigois, which means that the lender may not press the borrower for repayment. In that same pasuk, the Torah writes the same in the positive, shamoid kol baal masha yadai, that the loan becomes canceled. So we link, when is the loan canceled? When it was relevant, when it was a case in which lo yigois was relevant, because there was a possibility for him to press. So you tell a person that could press to pay it to get his loan back, don't do that. But a loan that is unpressable because it's denied. It was already denied in a way that the Beis Din looked at it and you can't do anything with it. So it's not shayach lo yigoy, so it's not, therefore the shamait kol baal masha yadoi is inapplicable. Okay, so that is a pshita. And now the Gemara answers, Rabbi Yirmiyah boyi, im lemidas hadin kain, do we take the same logic and broaden it beyond the dinim of Shvius to what, says the Gemara? That Lloyd, Gemara explains what's the question. Where might we broaden this concept? And let me just share a few words of introduction to understand what the Gemara is about to say. If you remember, we had the sugya so many times that a person's properties, well, that's based on the premise that he might have properties. But let's say a person has properties. We categorize one's properties into ziburis, beinanis, and idias. Ziburis will mean the least valuable. The beinanis, the average value, the average valuable, and idios one's greatest properties of greatest value. Pei gimel amid beis. And what are we saying with that? First of all, what do you mean more valuable, less valuable? Right? That means if I owe you $100, we're not talking about I have 3 lands and only one is worth 100. They're all worth the same amount of money. But just as one example, one property is very difficult to monetize for whatever reason. It has the value. Now we know that when people are in a rush and they want to liquidate something that's harder to liquidate, if they discount it, that's on them. That's because they were in a rush. But there are people that understand the world of any market. Certain things have a value. For some reason, it's harder to liquidate it, or it's further away from the city. It's a field that you have to walk more, or any other reason why one will consider something more or less valuable. Now, just for the record, that midin Torah, when a person lends money and the borrower is not paying back with cash, so the lender is collecting the loan from the borrower's property, midin Torah, if the borrower has these 3 categories of property, he can only collect it from the ziburis. He's getting his money back. It's going to be, let's say, harder for him to liquidate it. So be it. He's getting his money back. Came along the Chachamim, as they did many times, always being very mindful, wanting for the markets to have liquidity. And they felt that if the lenders will only be able to receive their repayment from the ziburis, if there is a default, it will make some people hesitate in lending money. Now, for that, they didn't have to allow them to collect it from the idios. If you remember, if I'm mazik your property, if I don't pay you back with cash, the mazik has to pay with the idios, just as an example. Right? Ksuba sisha, on the other hand, remains from the ziburis. Because of lemesav tandum and lemesav armulu, we're not afraid that women will not get married if they know that they can only collect the ksuba money from the ziburis. That's not a reason. But when it comes to a bal choiv, that's the rule. The Chachamim said that the person should be allowed to collect it from the beinanis. And now the Gemara asks the following: that loy sarcha, the loy milva, she nasas kafranis einu goiva. What happens? What happens? Kafranis v'nasas milva. Now that we established the rule by Shvi'is, and what did we say? That if a milva then was denied, and the denial of the borrower is a legitimate denial, until we reopen the case, it's as if the debt is not there. That's what we just said, and that's why it's not even canceled. On the other hand, if now the borrower or the lender, they say something, either the borrower is moed on the emes, I said lahadam, but it's not true, or any other reason why now this loan that became a kafranis, so it went dormant, it got a tchias hamesim, it came back to life. So now the Kuar wants to know, how do we view the fact that it returned as a loan? Do we say that just like originally, because of the Chachamim's concern, that even though midin Torah, if you come to collect from Karka, you can only collect from Ziburis. Comes along the Chachamim and they say no, that the lender has a right to the Beinanis. Do we say that it's mamish the same old loan that was reborn? If it's the same old loan, then he should have the right to collect it. If it's going to land, if it's going right to a lien, bebeinanis. Or do we say, let's think about it, that just like we mentioned, that this loan was not canceled by Shvi'is. Why not? Because during the time that it was a kafranis loan, it was as if there's no loan. There's nothing to be canceled. Okay, so now it was choizer v'neir. But this is a very unusual case. Why is it an unusual case? Because when it got resuscitated, when it was brought back to life, it wasn't that there was a new loan given. Now it was brought back to life. If we were to view it as something new, there's a logic to say on this unusual new loan, there is no gezedas chachamim, there's no gift that was given, there's no right given to the lender for him to be allowed to collect it from the Beinanis. Maybe now it reverts back to din Torah. And what's the din Torah? You can only collect from the Ziburis. Why would we say that? I'll tell you why we would say it. Because it's like a new loan. And this is a very unusual new loan. It's not a loan that was made by the lender lending money. It was a loan that was reborn through going to a Beis Din, through a counterclaim, through new evidence, or through an admissal. It's a very unusual thing. If it's only reawakening the old, then avada, you have to collect it from the Beinanis. But there's a possibility that it's considered as something new, and this is a very unusual thing. By unusual scenarios, there aren't any gezeres chachamim. It's for sure something unusual. But we are saying that if it's not considered the old reawakened, if it's viewed as something new, then there is a logic to say the Gemara is not citing on any direction. It's something that the Gemara leaves open-ended. Yerushalmi, just a point. Maybe you should only be able to collect from the Ziburis. Fascinating. And now the final Hamav ala Mashkin, one big chiddush still on Halacha Aleph. Now, here's what we said up until now, and we'll have to tweak it. That when a person lends money, if the lender took a movable mashkin, then the lender took a mashkin, so that loan is not canceled. Why? We said, of course, because why would the loan be canceled? It's not that the money owed is in the hands of the borrower, that we are telling the lender, don't press him. No, the lender already has it. Right? That made a lot of sense. Now we'll see. Hold on. Now we'll have to expand our sense. Says the Gemara Malvala Mashkin. Shmuel says, I want you to know one thing, that this rule isn't only if the mashkin's value is equal to the loan, obviously, or even more than the loan. Then what we said, mamash das balabatim, it makes sense. Shmuel says it's much more than that. That even if the mashkoin, he gives an example, is a machat, is a needle. We're using this as an example because a needle has very little value. So imagine I loaned you $100 and I took as a mashkin the needle. The needle, let's say, is worth $1. Here, one might have argued, okay, $1 of the debt is not canceled because it's already collected. But the other $99, I don't have it in the mashkin. Says Shmuel, no, that's the chiddush of the Mishnah. That even if though the machat has, if you want to measure it quantitatively, it has a fraction of the value of the debt, we don't view the mashkin that way. We view the mashkin as representing the entire loan. And therefore, we say that the lender already collected the whole loan, even though he's still after the other $99. Even if the guy says, keep the mashkin, I want another $99. Now, where else do we see, that's what the Marafulda is going to bring, that a collateral that's worth a fraction of the price of the debt represents the whole debt? He gives a great example. What were to happen if the lender loses the needle? Everyone is honest. I loaned you $100. I wanted collateral. The only thing you gave me was something worth $1. I took a needle, a sewing needle. Machat, an example. And I, the lender, I lost it. And I'm owning up to that. So again, you would think, if I lose the needle, then the borrower can say, okay, I only owe you $99, right? I'm not going to pay you $100 because I want my needle back. You lost the needle, but that's not the halacha. The halacha is that if I lose the needle, I cannot collect 1 cent. Because the needle represents, if I accepted the needle as collateral, then of course, you have to give me back $100. I'm going to give you back the needle. I'm going to get the $100. But if I lost the needle, you owe me nothing. That's another area in halacha where you see that at times when we're looking at collateral, we're not looking at the quantity of the value of the mashkin. We're looking at the concept that the mashkin represents the loan. So just like it's to the lender's detriment, if he loses the needle, he loses the loan. Equally, it's to the lender's betterment, it's to his advantage that if he doesn't lose the needle, even though the loan is $100, and Shvius normally cancels the debt, all I have is $1 of the $100. We don't view it that way. We view my needle as if I, the lender, I have the whole thing collected already, even though I'm demanding the other $99. That's the chiddush of Shmuel, which is great. Now, the final two dinim in the Mishnah, the Mishnah, the Brisa brings a pasuk that is the source of the final two dinim of the Mishnah. One is Hamal Varamashkin, and the last case in the Mishnah is Hamoiser Shtoiroisev Lebeis. Let me just say it by heart, that if there are debts, that they are documented. Shvius means, 7th year means the year ended, I can no longer collect it, they are canceled. That's only if you owe money to me, I'm an individual, I cannot collect it, and therefore the loan is canceled. If I physically hand over my documents to Beis Din, now, I'm not saying that the money will go to Beis Din. No. We are saying is that I am giving Beis Din the power of attorney to collect those debts on my behalf. The money is owed to me, but it's not going to be collected by me. In other words, the borrower now is answerable not to the lender, but to a Beis Din. That debt is not canceled. Now, both of these dinim, that if there is a collateral taken, or if the documents were physically handed over to Beis Din, that debt is not canceled, the Braisa learns it from the same pasuk. And here's the pasuk. The pasuk writes, that which you have with your brother is tashmeit yodecha. You have to relinquish, you have to let go, which means you have to cancel it. So first of all, that excludes a case where your brother has by you something. That's when you took a collateral. In other words, if I lend you money, so then it's correct to say that the lender has something of his in the hands of Shimon, of the borrower. But the moment the lender took a mashkin, like we said, even if the mashkin is not worth the value of the loan, it's a fraction. But it's not a debt in which Reuven is in the hands of Shimon. No, Shimon is in the hands of Reuven. Reuven has a mashkin of his. So that's the pasuk that shows us that we exclude the case of a mashkin, even if the mashkin is a machad. Don't forget, if not, I would argue, if not for the chiddush of Shmuel, you don't need a pasuk. It's already collected. Be that as it may. Furthermore, from the same words, the lacha that you have to relinquish, you have to relinquish if it's on you to collect. And that excludes the case where a person handed over his documents to a basin. And I know that the Mishnah concluded that's the ending case of the Mishnah on Halacha Aleph in the beginning of the Spedic of Hamoiser Shorois of Lebesin. There's something that's so rare, so unusual. I don't know if it's the only time, to my recollection, so far, I think this is the first time we're ever doing it, is that the Gemara, don't forget, the Mishnayos were written, right? Then we compiled the Gemara to explain the Mishnayos. We're quoting a Braisa, right? The Braisa was not, the Mishnah didn't give a source. This is a Braisa. The Gemara is stopping the Braisa in middle. We are introducing now, if this is the correct order of the Gemara, Talmud Yerushalmi, the second halacha. And then the Gemara is going to continue to quote the same Braisa. Yeah. This we don't have in the Bavli ever. Unless someone can correct me over here. No, it's normally the sugya ended, and now you begin a new Mishnah. And I understand why this happens over here. Because Hamoiser Shtoirois of Lebezdin, and now the case of Pruzbul is really the same concept. Or even the same case. So in the Bavli we quoted in Makes Machloikes Rashi Toisvis, if it's the same case or not. From the way we have our version, our girsa here, it's mamish the way the Ritva that we quoted, that a pruzbul is predicated on the din of hamoiser sheirois of lebezdin, but it's not exactly the same thing. And let's us unfold. Just want to point out that the Gemara quoted the Braisa. That's not the end of the Braisa. Mishnah, and then we will continue with that Braisa. Says the Mishnah, halacha beis, that if there is a pruzbul is pruz, means a takana, or prus means a gift, a prize. Even in English, maybe prize, pruz comes from that. And it's a prize. Bully means not a bully. Bully means rich. Maybe rich people are bullies. Maybe not. Become rich and we'll find out. And buti means poor. Pruz, bully, buti. Which is tam lahoyer. That's what we learned in Gittin, I think, Daf Lamed Vav. Wherever we had the sugi, we had like 2 daf on Pruzbul in Bavli Gittin. And here in the Yerushalmi, we're having a whole pedic on Pruzbul, which is quite amazing, on Shvis, on Shmitas Ksofim. But it's mashma from our Mishnah that the takon is primarily for the rich. So it's an enactment that was made to the benefit of the rich, which is, the Torah says that if a person will be concerned that the debt will be canceled and therefore not lend the money. We just read the pasuk, and the poor man who needed the loan, which is all of us, we need a loan, is going to call out to God, and the person who had the pocket and did not lend the money will have a sin. And don't forget, it's a big nesoyin, because like we mentioned, this goes even to a case where a person is asking for a loan 30 days before the end of the 7th year. And think about it. When you lend money, Stam, for 30 days you can't collect it. So you can't collect it, and then it's the end of the year. Then the whole thing is canceled. So basically, one might have argued, what does God want from me? I mean, am I obligated to give him a gift? Now, on the other hand, this guy could pay back the loan. He's saying he'll pay back the loan. In other words, Tam halva shloishim yom, we made a mention to this yesterday, even though we have a chazaka that ein adam perea toich zmanai, there's no doubt that in such a scenario, that's the talk. The lender says to the borrower, how can I lend you money? The guy says, no, I'll pay back. Don't worry, I'll pay back before the end of Shviz. I want to make stam when you lend a person money right now, no matter what they say, how do you know they're paying back? And how many gamachs were given where the borrower said that he didn't, because he couldn't, but he didn't. So anyways, it's a
Rabbi.
Big, yes.
Can you just clarify that if the loan was given more than 30 days before Shemitah, and then the due date came before Shemitah, and he said, hey, where's my money? And the guy didn't pay him, and then Shemitah came, does that loan also get canceled?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now let's put something together. So what we just learned, in the Gemara, that if there is a psak of Beis Din, so let me tell you what would happen. If the loan was given, let me give the Gabai's case, and it was due before the end of the 7th year, and the borrower is defaulting. He says, I don't have the money. What the lender should do is he should go to Beis Din and get Beis Din to write a document that say, go and pay him. Once there is a document of Beis Din, then the loan won't be canceled. No, that's not a pruzbul. That's something else. That's but it doesn't happen so quick. When you call a person to a basin, there's a procedure. You have to. He can come. He cannot come. At some
Or could he
point,
take a mashkin at that point?
Huh?
Can he take a mashkin at that point, or it's too late?
It's too late. You take a mashkin when you lend the money. And I want to go back again. So you made a good point. In other words, again, you can argue what's the sin of not loaning money 30 days before the end. You're not going to get it back. Well, lend money and take a mashkin. But then there is a time that the poor man has nothing to give, or he's not willing to give, and the trader doesn't give you a heter. It's a very hard mitzvah.
I would say the heter is to give a needle. If you give a needle, then
the guy says, "I don't even have a needle." I'm with you. Bottom line is, a prusbul will be another way that even if the loan was made and no mashkin was taken, and even though you're not going to go to Beis Din, or you're unable to get to the point where Beis Din is going to write a document adjudicating the debt and writing, go pay him, the other way solution will be a prusbul. And says the Mishnah that Zeh echad min hadvarim, this is one of the many things. Shehiskin Hillel Hazakin. It's a takon of Hillel Hazakin. Why did he make this takon? It says the Mishnah that he saw people out of apprehension. I mean, you can understand this. They did not lend money one to the other because they didn't want, they were, what's the fear? It's too close to the end of the Shvis, and it's going to be canceled. And then that what? There should not even be an evil thought in your heart. And like we mentioned, the severity of the word belial, which means evil, is a word that's used only by avodah zarah, and here not lending money. At kedei kach. Lame, what are you going to say? Karva shnasa sheva shnasa shmita. The trader says what you might say in your heart. And bottom line is, people were not just lending the money. So Hiskin Hillel Hazakin, so he enacted a prusbul. And again, it sounds like from our Mishnah that he did it for the rich not to be in violation. Again, even though prus bull is rich, but in the Bavli it says prus bully bute. The ikar for bute means poor. The ikar for the rich and also for the poor. The poor means you get a gamach. Or maybe it's self-understood why this is a prize for the poor. It's a prize for the rich. We don't want the rich to be in violation. Now, says the Mishnah, Zehu gufay shel prusbul, meaning what's the text of the prusbul? So this is what's written. I know that halachically now we all do this. We say it. But in the Mishnah, it was a document. And we write, or let me go different. It doesn't say you write it. So this is the text. And that's like what we say. Moiser ani lochem. The individual stands in front of a Beis Din and he says that I am submitting to you the Beis Din. Ish ploini uploini. Ish ploini uploini means he's specifying who is the Beis Din. There's a problem here because normally a Beis Din is comprised of 3 people. So if the names of the judges have to be in the prusbul, whether it's written, whether it's articulated, l'chu'ura, it should have been ish ploini uploini uploini. So by the fact that the Mishnah writes ish ploini uploini, so the Rash Cirilio reminds us that in Bavli and Gittin, Daflamid Beis, again, that's the topic of Shemitah. There is a machlokes amoraim whether you need to have 3 dayanim, or perhaps for this 2 dayanim is enough. That's a trick question. Where do you have a Beis Din where 2 dayanim is enough? According to some opinions by prusbul. The minig by us is that since we make Hataras Nadarim, we do it at Rosh Hashanah, at the end of the year, the last day of the year. Again, by us, it's not that you're chayv to the Alter Rebbe once for people to do it in front of 9 or 10 people. It should be 10 people together or in front of 10 people. So you have a Beis Din of 9 or of 10. Be that as it may, you specify who they are. Hadayonim shebamakim ploini, or ish ploini uploini goes on the Edom, just for the record. And the Dayan shebamakim ploini, that watch a kol choiv sheyesh li, that all of the debts that I have, she'egbenu kol zman she'ertza, I'm giving it over to the Beis Din. So hold on. So first of all, the money has to be paid to whom? To Beis Din. Now let's think about it. Who is Beis Din? What you think Beis Din now? Who Beis Din is going to collect it? What does that mean? All 3 judges? No, not even 1 judge. Beis Din appoints someone to represent the Beis Din. So this guy is offering himself to be the representative of a Beis Din to collect a debt for the Beis Din that has to be paid to him. Gavaldik. So in other words, he ends up collecting it and keeping it. But no. The debt was given over to the Beis Din. And now you owe me money. I am collecting it from you, not me. I am representing Beis Din collecting the debt that you owe to me. But I'm collecting it for Beis Din, who will then give it to me. You have to take a picture of the people there to see their faces. Yeah.
He appoints the lender.
He appoints himself. He's the lender. The lender is giving to Beis Din, he's submitting all of the loan documents. And then he adds that I will collect it on your behalf whenever I want. Oh,
This is a very fast process.
this is something that we just say verbally. Yeah. And v'hadayonim choismin lamata oy ha'edim. Now, either the judges sign, clear, and the Mishnah was a written document, even though we don't write it, and either it's written in a way, now it's late, and we'll have plenty of time when to get into this. We learned this properly when we learned at Rambam. You have to know how to write a document. There's a document that's written by Dayanim, the Moisav Tulisa Havena. We were sitting 3, because Beis Din is normally 3. Or it's a document that's written by Eidim testifying what they saw in front of a Beis Din. In other words, it can either be written in a nusach of a document written by a Beis Din, then it's signed by 3 Dayanim on the document, or it's a document that's written by witnesses, signed by 2 witnesses, testifying that they saw that this declaration was made in front of 3 Dayanim. Or perhaps, like we just quoted from the Bavli, that you only have to have 2 Dayanim. But there's Dayanim and there's Eidim, and the document will be written either by the Dayanim, signed by them, or written by the Eidim, signed by the Eidim. Now hold on. I want to chaparana over here. So says the Gemara, listen to this. Now, again, this is mamish, a continuation of the Braisa that we had before the Mishnah. The last thing that we learned was that based on the words, Va'asher yeh locha esachicha tashmeit yodecha, that which you have in your brother's hand, you have to relinquish. Not that which Beis Din has. So mikan, mamish middle, says the Braisa, samchu leprusbul shumen HaTorah. Here you see biblically that prusbul works. Because only a debt that you have with your fellow, you the lender, you relinquish. But the moment the debt was handed over to the Beis Din, that loan is not relinquished. It's not canceled. End of quote. So asks the Gemara, the Mishnah just says this is one of the dvarim shehisken Hillel hazaken. That's not min HaTorah, that's biblical. So fragt the Gemara, prusbul dvar Torah. The Mishnah says it's Hillel. So the Gemara answers that what? Kishehisken Hillel samchul dvar Torah. We're going to stop over here, which is gavaldik. Min HaTorah. What is the solution to get out of this din of shamoit? If you physically hand over the loan documents to Beis Din, if you're moiser shtoiroisav leBeis Din, that was the ritva that we quoted over there in Makkas. But if you are holding on to your documents, making that declaration, even though it's being documented, is not enough. I want you to know that we learned about this in much more detail. That means if I have a loan, I don't know Allah Havdal how the goyim do it. If let's say if money's I own a mortgage to the bank, so then they can sell these debts. They do that. Banks change these debts. There's a value to it, right? So halachically, what needs to happen midin Torah is that the documents have to be handed over, the physical documents plus a new document. Not so simple to hand over a debt. In other words, if there's a loan that says money is owed to me, for me to get the money to be owed to you, part of the process is that the document proper has to be given over to the new holder of the note. And this lahavdul, I'm just saying. First, that's a din Torah. I think the goyim do it the same way. It doesn't matter. The vart over here is that when a person physically gives their documents over to the Beis Din, that's the vart Torah. That's not Hillel Hazaken. But Hillel Hazaken facilitated the process. Because here, by a prusbul, I keep all of my documents. I don't even need my documents. Even if the loan was not documented. If it's a milva balpeh, I am simply orally stating, or even if I'm writing without giving any documents over, that I'm giving over to you all of my debts. That's something that biblically does not work. Elamah, Hillel made a takana midrabanan to facilitate such a system Or again, according to our Mishnah, in order for the wealthy not to be in violation of a blial in the Torah.
Question.
Bule, a takana, a prize for the rich, for the rich to do the mitzvah. Yevlad.
Question. When you turn over the prosbul to the Beis Din, and then
You don't turn it over to Beis Din. You don't turn it over
Turn
to
over
Beis
the
Din.
debts.
No, you turn over the debt, sorry.
Yeah.
But with a prosbul, right? Now, when the debt is collected, because now the prosbul is held by the Beis Din, does the Beis Din collect a percentage of it?
No.
Why not?
I'm happy you're not a judge, Dayan. Oy gewalt.
No, I'm just saying, if you've now
No,
put
the
me in
answer
the
is
middle
no.
of the process.
No.
The way it
That's
works, B'chal by a Beis Din, is that the Beis Din gets paid a salary from the city. That's the real city Beis Din, like Crown Heights. Everyone pays a tax, and you have a Beis Din. And then, whenever you need the Beis Din, you're gonna ask for the service of the Beis Din. Lahavdil the goyim, I think. I don't know how it works. When I go into court over here, do I have to pay the courts a special fee, or they paid? I don't care how it works. They're paid by the government.
You pay a fee to the court, but typically, if the court if you get a judgment, the court doesn't get a percentage of the judgment. But this isn't the same thing.
It's the same thing. It's the same
Rabbi,
thing.
can you clarify with the prosbul, you could collect in the 7th year and the 8th year, like whenever. It doesn't matter when.
Doesn't matter when.
As if
I'm just
Shemitah
saying
doesn't
the 7th
exist.
and the 8th years, because the Alter Rebbe, we make a prosbul. We say a prosbul twice because of the rush that we quoted in the beginning of this chapter, that holds that there's a certain step of you cannot approach at the end of the 6th, and then there's a total canceling at the end of the 7th. So we do it twice. But anyways, Vlad, if that Beis Din does not charge a fee, and they should, I see that they should not charge a fee. And if not, a lot of people owe you a lot of money. Vlad is having a tough time because he's thinking he's already 35 years old. For 30, since my bar mitzvah, I'm sitting in a Beis Din. Where's my money? Hashem will bless you with a lot of money.
I'm not sitting in a Beis Din. I don't want the responsibility. I'm just thinking, if you put somebody like an escrow company, you put escrow in the middle to collect. They collect a fee.
No, the big difference. I'll tell you the difference, Vlad, is that if Beis Din would actually do the collection, I would agree with you. Then they're doing something. You know what you're doing by a prosbul? You're giving over your debts to them, and then you're self-appointing yourself to be their representative to collect the debt for them, for you, whenever you want. So what did they do? They sat there for another minute by a thought.
They call this a legal loophole.
Jumped at the end to chop the minion. That guy should pay money to the Beis Din.